Welcome students to this session of political science class with me. In this session, we'll still continue with your chapter 14, okay? That is an international organization in a unipolar world with special reference to the United Nations. Okay, in the previous session, we have discussed about the relevance, the importance of the United Nations. And in this session, we'll discuss the remaining topic, that is this, okay? Reforms of the United Nations. What is there to reform it, okay, to bring about a change so that United Nations will be a major or an international organization for the global level, okay. Now, reforms to the United Nations, it has two, okay. First is reforms of structure and the other is reform of process. Now, reforming the process with special reference to the use of veto power. Now, when we talk about the first one, that is the reforms of structure, it is mostly referring to the numbers, okay, the numbers of the Security Council. Here, most of us, this reform, okay, it's mostly referring to the UNSC, okay, the Security Council. In the first, that is reforms of the structure, we are talking about how to bring about a change to the permanent number of the Security Council, because it has only 5, right? Now, it says that the size and composition of the UNSC, it is like the political realities that was in existence in 1945. When the United Nations came into being in 1945, there was around 51 original member countries, right? And these 51 original member countries, there were around 5 permanent countries. So it was somewhat a balance. Now, with the addition of new countries being a member to the UN, now at present we have around 193 members, yeah? Now, with an addition to the UN members, there is not an increase to the permanent members to the Security Council. So there is a need to reform the structure. Now, when we talk about the reforming the structure, the first things is we need to expand the Security Council. That is, increase the number, okay, from 5 to a more number, all right. Now, the second is the Security Council, it needs to be more representative. When I say representative, it is referring about, talking about the geographical representations, okay. Now, in your text, it is saying that the permanent members does not have a representation to the whole of the globe. Now, when we look at Europe, okay, Europe continent, it has 3 countries, right? We have Britain, France, and Russia. Now, these 3 countries, they are permanent members to the UNSC. Now, they are coming from the Russian, or we can say it is from the Europe continent. Now, when we look at the Latin America, when I say Latin America, it is referring to South Africa, okay? When you look at Latin America and Africa, none of the country comes from this, okay? No country is representing this continent. Now, when we talk about Asia, Asia, it has only one, that is China, now representing the whole of Asian continent. Now, the question here raises, how can the world's largest democratic country, that is India, does not or cannot find a permanent member to the Security Council? So that is the second question raised in here, okay, reform of the structure when we talk about representations, okay. So in the reform of the structure, 2 points, okay. First one is to increase the membership of the Security Council, that is the permanent members, okay. And point number 2 is to make representative, that means more working, especially in the global geographical level, I'm sorry. Now, when we talk about the reform of the process, okay, number 2, reform of the process, it is referring to the functioning, okay, the functioning of the UNSC. Now, it is saying that the working of the UNSC needs to be more democratic. Why they are talking about democratic? Because this veto power, okay, this veto power is there only for 5 countries. Now, the big 5 countries, they have this veto power, and this veto power makes them more unique and makes them more powerful. For example, when they are adopting major policies, or for example, when they are discussing about a military action that is going to be taken against any West Asian countries. Now, any of the 5 countries, okay, for example, one country, they are against this military action, they can use the veto power. And once the country uses the veto power, that decision, that is to take a military action, it becomes invalid, okay? It cannot be accepted. So that much powerful a veto country has, or that much powerful this veto has, okay? So with this, the existence of the veto in the UN Security Council, it makes the 5 countries more powerful. On the other hand, the functioning of the UNSC, it becomes undemocratic because most of the decisions are taken by the 5 countries, okay? And if one of the decisions, if they are not acceptable, that means that decision is rejected. So this, in the point number 2, reform the process, the world community, okay? The other countries, they want the UNSC to be more democratic in their functioning. So there was a recommendations made. Recommendations, okay? So as to bring about a reform to the, especially to the UNSC. So there are 2 recommendations, okay? There are 2 recommendations. The first is the working group. The working group, okay? This working group is the first group that was initiated so as to bring about a recommendation to the UNSC. All right. Now, this open-ended working group, the General Assembly, it initiated this, okay? Now, the purpose of this working group is to look after, or is to point out recommendation, how can the UNSC be more democratic in their functioning? And point number 2, how to bring about a change, okay, to the structure, that is how to increase the number of the permanent members to the Security Council. So the working group, after going through all these problems, okay, they gave a recommendation, and the proposal, it was sent in 1977. Okay, this was submitted in 1997, okay, when Kofi Annan, he was the Secretary General to the UN. Okay, now the proposal that they gave, okay, this working group gave was in the form of 4 points. The first is, it says that the permanent member, any new permanent member should be of economically and military powerful, okay, the first one, economically and military powerful. Point number 2, it says that it should be large enough. When you say large enough, it is referring to the number of population, okay? The country should have large enough or large number of population. Point number 3, it talks about that country should make enough contribution to the UN fund, okay? And the last point, it says that the country should respect democracy and human rights. So these were the 4 recommendations that was suggested by the working group, okay? First, once again, I'll say it is that country should be militarily and economically powerful. Second, that country should be big enough, that is referring to the size of the population. Number 3, the country should make enough contribution to the UN fund. And the last, the country should have respect for democracy and human rights. So these were the 4 proposals that was given by the working group. All right, now the second is the high level, okay? High level. This is the second group. Now the high level panel, okay, this was formed in 2004. All right, this high level panel, it was initiated in 2004. Now the recommendations that the high level panel gave was in the form of models, okay. It gave 2 models, that is Model A and Model B. Model A and Model B. Okay, now let's go to Model A. In the Model A, they gave a representation to increase the number, that is from 5 to 11. This is the permanent members, okay. This Model A, it suggests that the permanent members should be increased from 5 to 11. So here we have an addition of 6 countries, yeah. So these 6 countries, okay, it should come from all this continent, that is 2 from Asia, okay, 2 from Asia, 2 from Africa, okay, 1 from Latin America, and 1 from Europe. So this was the representation that was made in Model A, okay, 2 from Asia, and this Asian countries, it is referring to India and Japan, okay. And when we talk about 2 from Africa, it is referring to South Africa and Egypt, all right. And 1 from Europe is referring to Germany, and the last one, Latin America, it is referring to Brazil. So these were the 6 countries that they mentioned, okay, in Model A. So as to have equal representation in the entire, when we talk about from the geographical point of view. Okay, so these were the 6 addition members to the UNSC. Okay. Now, when it comes to veto power, okay, veto power for these 6 countries, this Model A did not refer or did not mention. Okay, so the use of veto power for this new country was absent. There was no mention of the veto power. Now, when we talk about Model B, okay, when we talk about Model B, it refers to the increase of the total membership of the UNSC. Okay, at present, the UNSC, the total membership, it has around 15, yeah. Now it tried to increase from 15 to 24. Okay, so this was the changes that was made by the Model B. All right. Now in this, they will have 4 years term. In the present UNSC, the non-permanent members, that is the 10 non-permanent members, they have only 2 years term, right? And they can be renewed. So in this new model, that is B, they will have 4 years term. Again, in this Model B, the questions of veto power, it is absent, okay? So none of the Model A, neither Model B, it referred or it talked about the use of veto power, okay? It is totally absent. So in one way, okay, the countries, they accepted, they favored this, okay? Increase of the permanent member as well as the entire structures of the UNSC. But when we come to the questions of the use of veto power, it was not there. So most of the countries, they rejected this recommendation that was given by the high-level panel. Okay, both first working group as well as the second recommendation, that is the high-level panel, was rejected by most of the countries. Now at present, okay, the suggestion to bring about a reform is mostly debated, and recently the countries, they are favoring India to be a member of the UNSC. Okay, now the next topic is, we'll talk about the major international economic organization, that is in the form of the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. Okay, the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. Major economic organizations, and we'll talk about their functioning, okay? How democratic are they in their functioning? Now, when we talk about the IMF, this one, International Monetary Fund. Now, this international organization is an organization which supervises world financial system, okay? And they promote monetary cooperation throughout the world. Okay, so what is the objective of the IMF? This fund, okay? The IMF, it is to give funds, okay? The funds, the countries, so as to pay off their balance of payment, okay? This is the first objective. They give loans to the member countries to pay off their balance of payments system. Point number 2, okay? It gives loans so as to bring about a correct maladjustment that the country is facing in the balance of payment system. That is, in other words, we can say is to help the countries to pay off their debts. Okay, so this is the main objective of the IMF. Okay, funds to give to countries so as to pay off their debts. Okay, now when we talk about resources, how means like the IMF funds, most of the funds, where does it come from? The first one is from subscription by the members, okay? By addition to the member countries, there is resources. And point number 2 is through borrowings, okay? Borrowings from the member countries, it is what made the IMF more, have to generate more funds, okay? Now, when we talk about how democratic they are working is, we have the G8, okay? Group of 8 countries referring to the most developed, okay, countries. For example, Canada, France, Italy, okay? And other members, that is Saudi Arabia and China. The G8 plus Saudi Arabia and China, they are the ones who takes most of the control of the IMF, okay? Maybe their functioning. For example, when they are about to give loans to the member countries, these countries are the ones who decides that, okay, how much to give, okay, and which countries is liable to get the funds from the IMF. So when we look at the functioning of this IMF, it is not democratic because the IMF, the funds are controlled by these countries, okay. Now when we talk about the World Bank, okay, this is also another major economic organization. Now the members of the IMF, they are also members to the World Bank, okay. Now this World Bank, it was started in 1945, okay, in 1945. And what is the purpose of this bank? This purpose of this World Bank is also to give loans, okay. The World Bank also gives loans, but the purpose of this World Bank is they give loans for development of projects. Okay, please remember. The IMF also they give loans, but to pay off their debts, okay. And the World Bank, they give loans for developmental projects. So you have to learn the difference between these two economic organizations, okay. Now those projects, for example, will be projects for developing power generation, okay, power generation transport, bringing about agriculture development. Number 2 will be assisting countries facing environmental degradation. So these are the areas where the World Bank will give loans, okay, for project or for developmental work that the country is planning to take about, okay. Now when we talk about the functioning of the World Bank, the criticisms that is levied against the World Bank will be, it says that the IMF and the World Bank, they are tools of great powers. For example, in the past, World Bank, okay, United States, okay, in the past, the United States, it denied to give loans or assistance to member countries where the United States does not have a friendly relations with the other countries. So most of all, the IMF, okay, majority is done by the US, because in this organization, the US and the G8 countries, they are the countries which give majority of funds, okay, in their working. Now when we talk about the last, the World Trade Organization, this organization is mostly for trading, yeah. It is the sole organization which looks after trade regulations throughout the world, yeah. It makes these rules and regulation into force. Now the World Trade Organization, it came into being in around 1995, all right. In 1995, World Trade came into being, and at present it has around 160 member countries. Okay, now the function, the main role of the IMF will be, point number 1, it makes rules for international trade, okay. It makes rules and regulation how countries will have a trading system in the international level, okay. And point number 2, it makes or it implements multilateral trade agreements. So these are the 2 key functions of the World Trade Organization. So in this topic, the major economic organization, that is IMF, World Bank and World Trade Organization, when we look at their functioning, okay, they are not democratic, because most of these major organizations, they are controlled by the big powers, because the big powers are the countries which makes majority or which gives funds to most of this, okay. Since majority of the funds are coming from these big powerful countries, the decisions are also controlled by them, okay. So with this, we'll come to the end of this chapter, that is Unit 14. So in Unit 14, we have discussed the UN, yeah, the importance of the UN, the relevance of the UN, and also the reforms, the changes that needs to be bring about the UN. And the last topic is the major economic international organization, that is in the form of IMF, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization. And in their functioning and in their working, these 3 organizations, they are not democratic in their functioning. So with this, we'll end this session. Thank you.